everyone. Welcome to another Beeler.Tech webcast. Today, we're going to be talking about what Bloomberg has been up to and there's some of the creatives that they've rolled out. Bloomberg, is a quiet company in terms of talking about some of the things that they do. And so when they actually posted out actual press releases about something they were doing, and of course, Derek spoke about a little bit of this at the last Ad Monsters. I got the sense that this was something worth discussing and whatever. And so I want to welcome Derek and Megan from Bloomberg. Guys, so we can hear your voices.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. And so, hey, we're using Zoom. So by all means, use the chat window. If your question is quite elaborate, just say, hey, I'd rather, do an audio question. Happy to do that as well. Yeah, let's dive in. So I want to talk about this ad.apt product that you do and the genesis of it. Where did this idea kind of come from?
So for us, ad.apt was keyed off of a couple industry trends that we've been paying close attention to. One was DFP native and some of the success that other big publishers were having, and by leveraging that platform. And then the other thing was the IAB Flex initiative and kind of living the day-to-day challenges of what a pixel-based advertising ecosystem, the constraints that places on a publisher to do really good, engaging design. So we were firm believers of the idea of aspect ratio advertising, but we also recognize that it takes a long time for the industry to fully embrace and adopt that kind of stuff. So we looked at both of those things and said, we have all of these assets at our disposal. We're pretty good at developing unique creative that advertisers want to buy. And how can we bring a lot of that stuff in-house and create something compelling and unique that also kind of pushes forward an industry agenda that we believe in?
Yeah, and I would add on a broader sense, even we've seen success with these, as we call them, innovative ad products, but really kind of non-standard products over the years. So we've really invested a lot more into them and really kind of paying attention to unique and different. What is it that's particular to Bloomberg, to our advertisers, and then keying in and developing those, but then also within our operations team, how can we streamline that from a resources, from a cost standpoint, et cetera. So while we started the team and the kind of initiative for that overall reason, I think ad.apt is really a genesis of an amazing ad product, but that also is, resource efficient and cost efficient also, which I think is a great additive, but clients are loving it.
You mentioned that you have these assets. Is that because these are really built off direct relationships, right? Or is this because you're already working with, say, an Oracle to do things, and therefore you have some of the assets to work with, or how does that part of it work?
Yeah, well, when I talk about assets, for us, one of the things that makes us really unique is that Bloomberg Media sits on top of a much bigger and broader relationship to the Bloomberg terminal, right? So we as a global company are processing well over 100 billion pieces of data every day, and we have little known but the largest journalism team anywhere across the globe. So we have a ton of content, we have a lot of data, and that data is really meaningful to our endemic advertisers. So for us, it was like, yes, we can create an ad format that's compelling and it's engaging and it's turnkey, but also how can we add in some of the assets that we have that are really unique to us to provide native utility to our users through our advertisers, and also help making those advertisements more compelling.
Yeah, from client assets, I think what's interesting about this ad unit, and going back to the cost effective, I think some of our iterations through the years has been that we used to need unique client assets in order to build ad units. And Derek can speak more to it, we need very little from a client in order to build a large, engaging, beautiful ad unit. We actually need very little from a client. We do most of the work through templates we build, through our own data, et cetera.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest pieces of success that we've seen here is that we will often, as part of the pitch process, not just go and pitch the product, but we will actually show them the live demo before ever talking to the advertiser or engaging. You know, it's as easy as us going to their website and saying, here's the headline from your homepage, here's your logo, here's a video that I grabbed off of YouTube,
and your
and
color,
here's,
et cetera.
here's an ad product, buy it. And then we've seen cases where somebody's like, yeah, that's perfect, run it. And then there are other cases where they're like, oh, this is really cool. It's actually not the branding agenda that we're pushing right now, but here's another set of assets. Can you build it with this?
So in other words, when you meet with a client, you actually show them a demo versus what we're going to do right now, which is you're going to use puppets or whatever's at your disposal.
Totally. Yeah. We should just close with a demo just in case it crashes the whole thing.
That's it. We could try that.
We're going to try that. We're going to try that. No reason not to. You know, what's interesting, you talk about that data, and the immediate company I immediately think of is Weather, right? And weather.com, the fact that what they've been able to do and build off of that, and you're the financial weather company, if you will, right? To kind of build off of that. And so one of the things I think I want to make sure as we steer this conversation, not everyone that's listening is sitting on all that data. But at the same time, they're probably sitting on some data that they're not completely utilizing, right? And so there are ways to kind of think about this. So what I want you to do is sometimes change your lens in terms of, this is Bloomberg specific. We want to hear that story, but we also, and I'll try to translate at times the other pieces of it. So let's talk about some of the things that you came up with in terms of conceptually. All right, so you thought, let's go toward native, let's go toward flex type ad units and support that. So give us some idea of, again, some of these ideas of what the execution might look like or whatever. I know, again, we can't demo it. We'll do that later, but maybe it would, I think, still help set the stage of the kind of things that you're doing. And then we'll translate later.
I mean, in essence, ad.apt is a component-based advertising system. It was developed fully in-house using an Angular platform. So, you know, again, this has been a long growth for Bloomberg. We didn't like one day say, let's do some ad product and, you know, hire a big team and like dive in both feet, right? Megan brought me in about 3 years ago, and we initially said, like, we need to create unique opportunities that go above and beyond what IAB standard display ads do, right? So from that point forward, the challenge for us was, we don't have anybody in here that can build this stuff. We don't have a ton of budget to do it. So there's where we start leveraging a lot of the industry relationships that we have with the really good vendors that we've worked with. And we push and we treat them like a partner, and like an extension of the team. But then knowing that we were going to start to transition to a place where we wanted to bring more and more of this responsibility in-house, right? So that got us to where we are today with ad.apt, right? ad.apt is a component-based advertising system. And what that means is that an advertiser will supply us with a headline, body copy, their brand colors, their logo, maybe a video if they're buying a video-based product. And we're using DFP creative templates, just like anybody would, where you plug in those components, you save it down, and you have a responsive ad that's running across every breakpoint that we have, in both a top of page, really high impact, wide ad, a vertical based ad that runs on our article inventory on desktop, and then a box ad that basically renders almost at half of the screen size on mobile. So again, much more impactful than just running a 300 by 250, even just in making it aspect ratio based, and you expand that 300 by 250 out to be edge to edge, it makes a huge difference.
Well, and I was going to say, Rob, to what you were saying too about, you know, we've thought around, you know, what can we utilize around, say, financial data, et cetera. And we do have an ad.apt product that pulls in financial data and does all those Bloomberg type things. But I think what's really great about ad.apt and how we try to think about our whole innovative ad portfolio is we have a lot of non-financial clients. We're huge in the luxury space and tech space, a lot of stuff like that. So you take a financial client to a luxury client, very different. And these, you know, really can change. And what this product team is great at doing is really listening to what a client's needs are and taking these products and kind of twisting and turning them to meet different client needs in a completely different way. So you could have an ad.apt product go to a financial client in one way and a luxury client in a completely different way, but it's still an adapt product. And I think that's what we've really kind of where we've seen our best success is being creative within these kind of templates.
And so there are a lot of things there to talk about, but I think, what I'm hearing, and again, I'm putting on my lens of a working for a small website, but the idea of components, right, which you hit on, which is again, this idea that if I can create a template, then my ask of the client is small. Right. It's not like, hey, I can do this amazing, Michael Bay directed, rich media creative and all.
I mean, you could do that too.
It'd be awesome too. Like little explosions all over the place. It'd be awesome, right?
But someone will build that for you.
Yeah, exactly. And the starting price for the creative alone is $50,000.
Exactly.
Right. So the idea of the components piece of it, which again, I think I like the fact that you're leading with that, is to say, look, we just need these pieces. And then you've got a template you build around that so that you can just plug those pieces in. And when I say plug, again, you can see I'm really doing the air quotes a lot now, right? You're plugging in those pieces and then building that out. Amy, you had the question about what you meant by components. I think I just answered that, but elaborate if you don't feel like I did.
Elaborate on
right. Go ahead. So what I was going to say then is it really is about building out those templates. And is that what you as from the product dev side, you took some time and built that out so that these are easy to implement templates? Is that where essentially the development and time was?
Yeah, it basically took us about 4 to 5 months to build out a suite of 4 the Adapt line, which we launched with 4 products. We launched with Adapt Brand, which is just a straight branding ad that allows us to take an image from the advertiser, their logo, their headline, their body copy, and you tell us what color and what CTA you want for your CTA button. And then we had Adapt Play, which is a similar thing to that, but with a video asset. So this is all around video completion metrics. We have Adapt Story, which allows us to pull in all of those advertiser branding assets, as well as a particular type of content that aligns with that advertiser. So if you are in finance and you are like pushing fixed income, we can pull in content that is all about like market volatility and things like that all align with trying to get someone to think about fixed income as like an investment product. And then we have Adapt Data, which allows us to pull in top performers across a certain indice or like hand pick data about a certain fund. And we marry a lot of our products together to make sure that when they actually render to an end user, that it's the story that the advertiser wants to tell. AKA, we don't want a financial advertiser talking about a fund and having that fund be down day over day, because that does them no favors.
Right.
But we control that because, again, we have the market data. So
well, let's talk.
It took about 4 months to develop the templates.
Got it. So I want to drill into some of the data piece of it, but before, one of the things you did mention is that you did work with some third parties toward the beginning of this, and it is interesting because and I'll name names. No one's sponsored here, but Clipcentric does some good things. There's a company called Speckless, which can work with you in terms of creating those kind of templates or whatever. So when you started, again, conceptually, you leaned heavy on those companies, right? Or those kinds of companies to actually kind of build that out for you, right?
And we still partner with a few. We've leveraged one big, I'll let you guess it, self-service platform. We do a lot of our high-impact non-adapt ads through. We still have one managed service partner. We actually have a couple of different managed service partners that fill very specific voids for us. And again, like you're always going to come across that instance where like you prepare for every scenario, but something's going to hit your desk that you can't deal with, and you want to make sure that you have a partner that'll support you through that.
And I think the key thing we did was, even when we had, when we were doing it fully working with vendors, we really trained our trafficking teams to project manage those builds. So it was led by the trafficking teams really gathering assets, working on timelines, working on approvals back and forth. So they became part of that process, even though the vendors were building. And then as we slowly brought in self-service, it was trafficking teams working on those self-service. So they were still kind of project managing with clients and getting assets, but then now doing the builds or working with the vendor. So that's as we kind of scaled out how we did it.
I mean, you really seem to have mitigated the risk, right? Because again, and I look at, like, it's amazing what Vox has done. It's amazing what Gannett has done. And they, the idea of New York Times having creative studios. I think we all would love to have a whole group that's just creating better ads, or even just more ads, for God's sakes, right? That just, creative frequency is definitely an issue. But by working with them and then breaking it into this component piece, again, I think you're able to then start to work those processes, show the client something, sometimes get that approval, and then you're off and running, right, in that conversation.
It also allows us to more easily collaborate internally as well. So for us to work with our creative studio or our custom content studio, if they're doing a big piece, they're all familiar with the Adapt platform now as well. So, and they know exactly what assets to turn around. And it's no difference for us to build a branded ad versus a content-based ad now than, as opposed to like in another organization where these things live separately and you've got one team that's creating their products and another team that's creating their products. We try to make sure that everything is funneling through one suite of products.
Yeah.
And I think something else that we saw from the beginning was where things broke down and what we tried to fix is we put this team square in the middle of operations. And before any product was released, we make sure that the communications chain goes all around so that before a product publicly goes out to sales in the market, trafficking is fully aware of it. They know if they're involved, how they'll build it, how they traffic it. The planning teams are fully aware of it and understanding it. So when sales comes and asks them, they're fully versed in it. And so we really kind of closed all those gaps with this team sitting in the middle, that they're the experts, and that when something went to market, all the teams behind the scenes were ready to go. And I think that was a huge disconnect that we didn't have before. This really helped streamline it all the way through.
And and one of those pieces I was going to ask about is editorial, right? So, to your point, very easy for something about banking to be, someone taking their own bonus, if you will. All those things are quite difficult. How have you found working, or any tips on working with editorial so that articles are tagged properly so they get pulled in, or are you still working that issue?
No,
well, I mean,
we're good now. It was a long battle.
Yeah. So we're fortunate, at least I'll start with the tagging question first, because we're fortunate on our product and editorial team that editors are doing less and less manual tagging for us. We're using AI and automating a lot of the categorization of the content. So that helps a lot, and that is something that we are clearly a benefactor of what this organization's doing. That said, like more broadly, our editorial team, we have a handful of folks that are kind of designated to work with us. We have a really, really great relationship with them. On their side, they have a healthy respect for why revenue is important, which is already a nice differentiator from a lot of places. But then on our side, I think that, we spend a lot of time and energy making it clear to people that, I personally don't think that big ads are a problem. I think slow ads, I think too many ads, I think irrelevant ads, all of that stuff leads to an issue. But generally we've been in a lot of meetings where edit or a product team is like, yeah, we need more article or more ads on this article. If it's a low value user, I'm like, I disagree.
No. Yes.
I want quality ads. I want quality engagement. I want, I want the few ads that we have to be big, and I want them to be impactful. And so I think that, we have a really solid relationship because neither side is really pushing a single-minded agenda.
That's it. I would agree. I think it took a bit, we've both been here over 3 years now, and I think we really built the trust up when they saw those types of things Derek was talking about, that we want ads to be more relevant to users, more impactful. We don't just want to throw them all over the place. And I think once they saw really where we were coming from. And we also brought them into the process. So we have, heads of edit and design and product from the site side in on the innovation process, giving us ideas, giving us feedback, et cetera, so that they're involved. We have a whole kind of data team on the engineering side that really helps us understand user behavior, and we take that input and how can we apply it to ads. So that kind of partnership has really developed over the 3 years. So I think we've built that trust, and then really bringing them into the fold, and we've just produced some of our greatest ideas have really come with a lot of their input.
It also doesn't hurt that the stuff that we're creating makes up a large percentage of our total digital revenue. So everyone's bought the importance of doing things differently. So that definitely doesn't hurt.
And is that just, again, so you are going to, whether it be endemic or non-endemic advertisers that are, of course, they're associating with the Bloomberg name and the quality, right? So you obviously direct, and are you finding that you're able to go out there with this initial pitch and talk about these components and just say, look, we know you're working with an agency that does all these creatives. That's great. We want to make sure you see these, and this might be the direction you want to take. I'm kind of curious as to how that conversation plays out.
Yeah, so here's what we'll have real talk. So yeah, you put marketing materials out for a product that say that it's, high impact, turnkey, blah, blah, blah. Most brands want to buy that. And we've seen that. This is by far the fastest growing revenue product that we've ever had. And this is, we've launched probably 25 to 30 products in the 3 years that we've been here. Now, there is still, and I fear always will be, a massive disconnect between what the brand originally says and what the creative agency starts to mandate later. And that's something that, quite frankly, we're still figuring out how to navigate, because the Adapt platform has been built in such a way that we can do a healthy amount of customization to how text is rendered, the shape of buttons. The big challenge that we have, though, is that we want the template we don't want to mess around with where these things live inside the template. So I don't want an advertiser saying, I don't want my logo in the top left, I want it in the top right. But that's the job of creative agencies. So that's something that we're navigating now. And we actually had a global town hall last week, and I kind of made the pitch to the entire global sales team to partner with us. And not in the sense that we want this to be easier to build, but one of my longer term objectives with Adapt is we have Adapt tagged up with Google Analytics tagging. And we have it at the component by component level. So I will be able to match that up with our audience data. And I can say that I know that this segment of users engages with a creative in this way.
Yeah.
The long-term goal is for us to be able to make really informed decisions upstream of building a creative and say, I know Rob engages like this, so I'm going to render the creative like that for Rob versus the way that Megan engages. We have all the data to do that, but in order for us to get to that place, our challenge is to get advertisers on board with this is a template.
Letting it go.
So yeah, we have data in the long term, and maybe not today, but in 6 months or 12 months, you're going to be the beneficiary of that data.
And I know Gannett's been able to do that too. They've produced such volumes that they're able to go into clients and be like, yes, I know you think this, but this is what we've seen. This is how this performs. You'll want to do it this way. And that's where we really want to get to.
Yeah, it's funny. You remind me of my days of doing a hyper local advertising at the newspaper level, and the car dealership who just believes he needs to be in the ad, and you're just like, please, just anyone else but you.
Trust me, you don't.
Well, one of the things that I would think would come up though is their tracking, right? So you can break down those to the kind of components. They're going to want the same kind of blocking tags to verification, to viewability, and so forth. And are you able to just build that into this, or is that a stopping line?
Yep. No, we have the capacity to accept verification, viewability, their third party tracking. We are measuring everything with Moat and with IAS. So we get that kind of, like, we often talk about the product, at least right now, openly, we talk about the Moat metrics that we're getting because we haven't run long enough or have enough volume to really get into the benchmarking at the component level. So all of the standard creative tracking that somebody would expect we can do, but the Google Analytics stuff that we're doing on our side right now is more for us than for the advertiser. But eventually the hope is that, yeah, this is the additive reporting that we're going to give you that tells you what pieces of content was somebody clicking on, what part of your branding was someone engaging with, like which headline works best.
And overall benchmarking, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, one thing you get to, it sounds like, is control where those pixels go, right? So as opposed to them being hard baked in and rendering at the top versus the bottom and so forth, you get at least control some of that piece. So a question asked, as you mentioned, 30 to 40 products launched. How many have you killed off of those 30 or 40?
Oh,
many.
I love killing products. We actually, like, we have a whole process on killing products as well. I think that we've probably in 3 years launched about 30, and I think that we've probably killed about 12 or so.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, once we get through the end of the quarter, we'll be making another push to kill probably 6 or so.
Yeah.
And obviously the lens is it making money? Does it perform?
Yeah.
And if either of those are yes, then we take a harder look. If both are no, then it's done.
Yeah. And I think there are some more like niche specialty products that aren't expected to make as much money, but you might keep on for a certain reason. So there's variables in how we measure. But we also say, like, if you never kill products or you make things like you know, I don't think you're taking enough risks if you put everything out there and it's so safe and perfect that you never kill it. Yeah. Like, there are things that we've put out there that we thought would be amazing and it never happened. And well, that's what happens. And that's
Is that just a matter of letting a product sit and be like, I guess, in other words, when you kill a product, technically you're still sitting on all that stuff. So if someone just jumps out and says, you know what, did you ever have somebody did this? You might be able to kind of pull that back, or when you kill it,
if somebody came with a bunch of money and they're like, no, this is what I want, we would make sure that they understood why we killed it if it's a performance issue. But generally speaking, we're going to try to make it work. But
there's a lot of iterating on products too. Like we don't often just kill. We often see like, okay, this is selling, but this is not working how we expected to. What can we do to tweak? So there's a lot more of that, especially before we go to often.
And that's another thing that we have actually standardized in our workflow. So we have a very specific way in which products are conceptualized and then developed. And then once they're launched, we have a very specific way that we think about ownership of that product within the product team and what that ownership responsibility actually means. And it usually comes down to evangelism, like who's on the hook to like talk to the sales organization about this specific product, get marketplace feedback, make sure you're supporting sales and answering questions, but then also doing all the measurement, what's working and what's not working about the product, and then feeding out ideas back into the conceptualization and the development cycle for us to make good on updating that product or killing it.
Awesome. Got a question here. So, you mentioned that you initially outsourced a lot of this, or at least worked with, creative companies to do that. As you brought that in-house, did you have to staff up at that point, or was it just taking it, what is your staffing changes as you rely less on the vendors?
I mean, I was fortunate when I first came in here that we invested pretty heavily in digital trafficking, more than I think that most organizations would do. We did that, I think, seeing the end goal and knowing that a digital trafficker can be more than just somebody that accepts a creative tag and puts it in DFP. But since we did that 3 years ago, we have actually not staffed up incrementally on either the ad product team has grown. It started with just me in a dark room somewhere, to now having 3 people that are solely focused on the ad product team, but then the digital trafficking team themselves have been fairly flat for 3 years.
Yeah, but I do think the one thing we did do is we built up an outsourced team, not of vendors, but an outsourced trafficking team that helps us. They help us with a ton of things, but trafficking is one, because we knew that we wanted to push off to the outsourced team some of the work that the trafficking team was doing, be it just uploading tags and some QAs to free up some of the trafficking team's time for this type of work. So while we, haven't gone up or down or anything in trafficking, we did build up an outsourced team to help kind of support them
and
through
that's
this growth.
I think that is, and again, I've been preaching for that for some time, right? Is that idea that so many of these mundane tasks are at the point now, outsource them. You're not losing those people. They just move and their roles start to change. And, you talked about before is retention and training. So can you talk a little bit about, so for these traffickers who are now, you want me to build an ad? I'm trying to think of, like what?
Yeah.
Can you talk through kind of what
that at first.
We had a lot of those conversations in the beginning where people looked at me like I was a little bit crazy when I came in here.
It's not my job.
I think that the training that we've done, as Megan mentioned, 3 years ago, was more about project management. So getting comfortable with getting on a phone call with a client, hearing what their creative vision was, communicating that to a third-party vendor, and then making sure timelines were kept and that we were getting the approvals, right? So that's like step one. Step two became, okay, we just built a template in a self-service platform, and we want you to do that exact same ad that you were doing before, but now I want you to build it. And, I think that one of the most remarkable things is that the traffickers are actually, like, if you talk to a self-service platform and you do a training with them, my traffickers are actually better versed than what the trainers often are. Because they get how a system works and they know how pieces come together, and they understand the technical elements of rendering a creative. So they took to that, and then it became the bigger challenge became, how do you teach someone that doesn't have a design background how to worry about the design aesthetics, particularly when you worry about like responsive design from desktop down to mobile. And that's something that we have an interactive developer designer on the ad product team. He almost monthly does a kind of a training curriculum with the digital traffickers, often driven by the challenges that they're running up against from clients. He builds an agenda. We sit down, they go through tips and tricks. We talk about like what's a good CTA versus a bad CTA. We talk about like how much text is too much text on a mobile screen. And I think that their growth has been pretty tremendous. And now we're at a place where instead of working in a self-service platform, here's a template, put it in DFP directly. And, now it's almost doing some HTML training, because instead of just doing design, they're having to figure out how to do some simple inline styling and things like that. So,
well, and I was going to say too, I think going back a bit to originally, bringing on the outsourcing team, it was scary, of course, because everybody's first thought is this taking my job? But to what you said, we really have pushed off more of the mundane tasks. It is, straight QA and, tag uploads and stuff like that. And I feel like what we've tried to do is really make the job of trafficker richer here. There's a lot more client interaction. It is the complicated problems that they're dealing with in regards to trafficking. It is building creatives, and we've seen our retention rates here are really amazing in regards to the digital trafficking team, because I think it is this broader job where you are not just often in a back corner, managing campaigns, never interacting with clients, never doing anything outside of trafficking. You are doing what traffickers do, talking to clients, managing campaigns, and having this additive task, and really getting to broaden your skill set, be it if you want to go on as a trafficker or really seeing other types of roles and getting other skills.
And I think the other big thing is this is not a Bloomberg specific thing, because we've seen it at other organizations as well. There is money in this banana stand, right? Like if you're willing to be creative, think of a unique opportunity. You don't need to throw a lot of bodies at it. You just have to do the hard work of coming up with a concept, and then the harder work of getting people to internally to understand that concept. Yeah. But I think it's public, so we can say it. The 2017, the line item revenue for digital for Bloomberg, 22% came from these innovative products. So this is not an insignificant line of revenue for us. Yes. Yeah, and we're up year over year. So you don't have to on day one try to boil the ocean, but you come up with one seemingly stupid idea or simple idea and try to get buy-in.
Well, and like we said, there are great partners out there who will really help you, who have, larger, interesting formats to start with. And like I said, I would really think about who are your clients, who are your users, and what is the content of your site. And you'll see, as we've talked, it's very much that's how we thought. But I think it's like you talked about weather and the data they have, and we have data, but others have, you really want to think, why are your users coming to your site? What is their mindset when they're coming? And then you want to kind of think of your advertiser and an ad in that same context. And then a partner can help you with the, unit components, however you want to call it itself. But there are ways to start on such a smaller scale to really, and then go out to talk to clients about how you have something different and continue to iterate and tweak upon that.
Yeah. It reminds me, so I throw out this idea just because I want people to start to think through, again, the data or the advertisers they had. So I was on the newspaper side, right? And the biggest issue was that the newspaper people sell at such a local level, and the inventory doesn't really support that, right? But what I did is I started creating ad units that included, florists in your area, right? Geo-target those, right? And list multiple ones, allowing you to sell at a very newspaper type of approach with that. And it's all house ads. I had the inventory, right? And so there's a lot of ways to sit there. And again, this component piece it's simple, it's easy, but to sit there and think about the ask is there, easier for a salesperson to say, again, I don't need a super rich media. I don't need you to create this ad size. Give me these components. You're sitting on them. You've got them on a server somewhere. Let me work with them. And go from there.
I think that's one of the big values of having this function sit in ad operations. The harsh realities of the business that you're dealing with. You know how to turn those realities into opportunities. And that's been a big focus. Like, we're not going to sell something that we don't have any scale against. But if there's a need, we're going to figure out a creative way to package it up with other things and create something compelling.
You and again, I'm throwing this out just again for other people to kind of chew on and to think about. I had a trafficker fit the stereotype completely, just quiet, wanted his headphones on, didn't want to interact with the world, did his own thing. But, he would give me feedback and go like, well, this ad's not going to work, right? And you go like, why isn't it going to work? He's like, this, that, and whatever, right? Empowering that person and saying, okay, why don't you solve the client's issue then? Right? Instead of trafficking ads you don't want to see or you don't think is going to work, help create some things that are actually going to work. What are your ideas? What would make this work?
Exactly.
Right? Giving them some tools to work with or a partner to do that. Create those ad units, and next thing you know, you've got someone that's sitting there trying to champion that. Right? I think that's a really kind of cool story. I'm going to start to wrap up here. I guess I'd go either lessons learned, anything else that we didn't cover that you wanted to share, to then, kind of what's next? What are you thinking about?
I think lessons learned is the communication is key.
That would be mine. Yep.
We both, Megan and I, came from another big organization, but one that you could kind of do skunkworks things and you could be involved and you just figure it out and make it work. When for us now, with a super global organization, a really, really large sales team, a lot of moving parts between engineers and product people and edit and et cetera, the one of the biggest things that we had to really figure out, and it probably took us a year or so, was how do you actually formalize the process of innovation? And that's honestly, beyond the products themselves, probably the work that I'm most proud of, because we do it efficiently. We check all the boxes. We know how to keep our stakeholders involved. We know how to evangelize this stuff to salespeople.
Yeah, no, and I would agree. And that's the part I talked about before, about how it's key where this team sits, the pre-launch plan of making sure media planning knows to trafficking, to ad tech, to the pricing teams, everything is priced and ready to go. Whereas previously, a certain salesperson would get wind of a product and go sell it before anybody else knew about it. And it wouldn't be priced and we couldn't even deliver it. And we really kind of fixed that all behind the scenes. And so when something goes out, it is buttoned up and ready to go. Marketing materials are done all the way through. And that just makes us look like a well-oiled machine. But also we've all in operations had that scramble of you sold what? And we don't have that, knock on wood, at least in regards to this anymore, because we really process end to end of those teams so that once it hits sales, we're all informed and ready to go. And I think that made the world of a difference.
I mean,
Because then it allows us to do the other cool stuff.
Success in process makes people buy into the process, right? So then they stop just shooting ideas out there and so forth.
That's it. And it makes us look more buttoned up when the minute we go, we're ready to start having benchmarks. We can actually execute it. Everybody knows what we're talking about. It's already priced. Like sales is like, oh, okay, this is buttoned up. I can take this to market. I don't have to be scared of this type thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Well, people have been asking me, just so you know, privately, I've been getting a number of questions and so forth. And some of it has been wanting to talk with the two of you more. So this was a great conversation, and thank you for taking the time. I'm going to hit stop on the record button, but obviously, before I do that, thanks to the two of you. Thanks for everyone dialing in. And this is the kind of conversation, that I think is critical and really needed. So thank you so much.